Do keep Psalm 88 open in front of you. This is the end of this little series, Be Near Me, with that beautiful graphic that Rick has done for us yet again. What do you do when your life is a mess? What do you do when your life is a mess? When everything is going wrong at the same time? You know what it's like? Sometimes it comes like buses, doesn't it? You know, everything goes wrong at once in different areas. Maybe it's your working life. Maybe it's your marriage if you're married. Maybe it's the relationships, friends, things breaking down in that sense. Maybe it's your kids, your children. Maybe it's with your grandchildren or your grown children. You got their children, they're still your children, but they're grown up, but there's stuff going on, and it's maybe going on with more than one of them all at the same time, and maybe there's difficulties with money, maybe there's just a ton of things on your mind. What do you do when your life is a mess? What do you do when you're struggling with the same thing again and again and again, after years, after decades? What do you do when life feels so very dark, perhaps even every day, day and night? Well, that is Psalm 88, folks. And I'm sorry that we end on this note, but it's God's word and it's Psalm 88, and that's where we are. It's, I think, the bleakest psalm of them all. It's the bleakest psalm of them all. And I think it's the darkest, most seemingly hopeless ending to a psalm. Have you ever read a more hopeless ending of a psalm than Psalm 88 verse 18? You have taken from me friend and neighbor. Darkness is my closest friend. That's pretty grim, isn't it? That's Psalm 88. Someone has said of the psalm, it is without a note of hope. Someone else, there is virtually unrelieved gloom in this psalm. But where have we been with this series? It's called Be Near Me, isn't it? And it's not all been doom and gloom. So the first psalm, Psalm 84, we saw the great privilege of getting near to God. Remember that? You know, better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. It's a great privilege to get as close to God as we can. That was Psalm 84, wasn't it? And then Psalm 85 was that wrestle to get back to being near to God, or rather he was coming to get us to bring us back to being near to him. That was Psalm 85. Psalm 86 was David's cry for help in a very specific situation, but included in that he cried out that God would bring him near, that he would have an undivided heart, that he would fear God, that he'd know him and worship him. And even there was a sense of the importance of being near to God. That was Psalm 86. And then Psalm 87 last week, we saw the privilege of being born in the city and ultimately of being near God forever, which is what that's all about, isn't it? And now we see Psalm 88, when darkness is near and it feels like, it seems like God is not. So nearness to God is still there, but the problem is, where is God? God doesn't feel near. Is he near? If he is near in this psalm, it seems like he's near bringing terror and trouble and despair. That's what it looks like. Now, some of you need this psalm because you need this psalm right now. Some of you need this psalm perhaps because you could have done with this psalm a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago, or I don't know, however long. Some of us need this psalm because we experience shades of Psalm 88, not the full-blown experience, but shades of it, the troubles and overwhelmed and some of these things, the darkness that's described. For some of you, and perhaps especially for those of you who are younger than me, you need to store this one up. If you're not feeling it today, store this up, because one day you might need it. You will need it, as those who are a bit older will testify. So Psalm 88, And we're going to think about this picture of darkness, because that's the picture that we've got here, isn't it? 4 things as we take a look at the psalm. The first is, in darkness I cry to you. That's how the psalm begins, isn't it? So verse 1, Lord, you are the God who saves me. Day and night I cry out to you. I believe actually, literally, as he screams to God. It's very loud shouting, screaming to God. May my prayer come before you. Turn your ear to my cry. In fact, it comes again in the psalm, doesn't it? So verse 9, my eyes are dim with grief, but then the second part of verse 9, I call to you, Lord. Every day I spread out my hands to you. And then verse 13 comes again, doesn't it? But I cry to you for help, Lord. In the morning my prayer comes before you. We'll return to that in a moment. But there we are. There's the psalmist. In darkness, what do? I cry to you. And then the second thing that we learn is, in darkness I live. It's there in verse 3, isn't it? I am overwhelmed with troubles. Have you ever been there? Have you ever felt that experience of just being, you're just engulfed, you're flooded, you're overwhelmed with troubles. You just don't know where to start. You don't know where to turn. You don't know what to do. You've got no idea. It's everywhere. It's all around you. You're overwhelmed with troubles. But it's a bit more than that, actually, isn't it, for the psalmist here? What's this psalmist experiencing? What's going on here for Heman the Ezrahite? What's he experiencing in his life? Well, it goes on, verse 3, and my life draws near to death. I am counted among those who go down to the pit. I'm like one without strength. I am set apart with the dead, like the slain who lie in the grave, whom you remember no more, who are cut off from your care. Their understanding of death and the place of the dead in the Old Testament was pretty flat and empty and not as full as ours now is, with all the things that we now know in Jesus. And so the psalmist here is kind of going, look, God, either help me now or it's nothingness. That's what he said. Look, if you're not going to help me, then I'm going to the place you remember me no more. I'm cut off from your care. Please help me, otherwise it's just nothingness, beyond reach, kind of thing. There's a little clue as well in verse 15, actually, isn't there? So what is this psalmist experiencing? What is Heman experiencing? Verse 15, from my youth I have suffered and been close to death. I have borne your terrors and am in despair. Certainly, the psalmist, his experience of life is just lifelong troubles. You maybe met someone like that. You just think, you hear their story and you just go, God, their whole life has just been one thing after another. Lifelong troubles. Definitely that. And possibly, if not lifelong troubles, then actually lifelong illness and suffering. He has had this condition, has just lived with for a long old time. And he says, look, in darkness I live. That's my experience. But then it goes on a bit deeper and further than that, doesn't it? Because Heman says, in darkness, I'm in darkness because of you, God. I'm in darkness because of you, God. Verses 10 and 11 and 12 are a little bit weird, a bit tricky. All of a sudden we get this set of questions, don't we? Verse 10, do you show your wonders to the dead? Do their spirits rise up and praise you? Is your love declared in the grave, your faithfulness in destruction? Are your wonders known in the place of darkness, or your righteous deeds in the land of oblivion? What's going on there? I think what's going on here is the psalmist is saying, if that's the state of play in death, basically the answer is no. Your wonders aren't shown to the dead. Your love isn't declared in the grave. Your wonders aren't known in the place of darkness. Then, Lord, why don't you keep me? Keep me, heal me, help me, because then I'll praise you. I think it's almost sort of, God, if you keep me here and you sort me out, then I'll praise you. If I just go there, then that's it. It's this sense of nothingness again a little bit. Is that it? Sort of kind of thing. But that aside, just notice the emphasis here. It's very clear. Verses 6, 7, 8. Just notice the repetition here. Verse 6, you have put me in the lowest pit, in the darkest depths. Your wrath lies heavily on me. You have overwhelmed me with all your waves. You have taken from me my closest friends and have made me repulsive to them. And so it goes on. Did you see that repetition? The psalmist is saying, Lord, you have done this. You've put me here. You've done this. That's why I'm in darkness, because of you. Now that is a hard truth to bear, isn't it? I'm here in this darkness because of you. You brought me into this. What's going on here? Some of this is how it feels, isn't it? You know, God feels far, and I guess you'll have known that experience. Maybe you're just getting a look into my inner psychology, and it's just me, but I imagine it's not, because if it's me, it probably is everyone else as well. But maybe you just, sometimes in those moments, you feel like God is punishing you. Have you ever had that? In your darker moments where you feel like you're in this situation and God is punishing you because of something that you did before or said, but you've taken a wrong turn somewhere, and now some of it is just how it feels when you're in that place of darkness. The old Puritans had the lovely image that they so often used to remind us of the truth at this point. And just the simple thought was to think of the sun in the sky and the rays of the sun beating down. And you know, the sun is always there and those rays are always beating down. But sometimes, and in fact, oftentimes in our lives, the rays of we see them today, can't we? You're feeling the rays of the sun today, but there are many times in the British calendar year, there are many times in our lives where the rays of God's love and warmth and closeness and nearness are obscured, blocked by dark clouds in our lives. Is God still there? Yes. Do the rays of his love and mercy and kindness and compassion still shine down on us? Yes. Do we feel like that's the case? No. Because there's a blockage there, dark clouds in our lives, and so we just feel coldness and darkness and despair or whatever it might be. Some of this, I think, this is how it feels. Perhaps we sense more of his frown than his smile, for all sorts of reasons. But some of this here is just, as I said, a hard truth which we've learnt before. He is the sovereign ruler of the whole universe. And he brings us into dark times. And the psalmist isn't entirely wrong in saying, I'm here, I'm in this situation now because of you. And we learned this a lot, didn't we? And when we did this series on Joseph and the providence of God, and we kept going back to the good old Heidelberg Catechism, or Heidelberg Cat, as it's sometimes known, and that question about the providence of God. And the answer to what is God's providence was this, and it really helps us on this. God upholds, as with his hand, heaven and earth and all creatures, and so rules them, that leaf and blade, rain and drought, fruitful and lean years, food and drink, health and sickness, prosperity and poverty, all things, in fact, come to us not by chance, but by his fatherly hand. Now, that is a very hard truth to hear and to stomach. I know that. But that is what the Bible teaches, isn't it? Actually, all things come to us not by chance. We're not in some haphazard... No, all things come to us by his fatherly hand, even dark things. Rain and drought, fruitful and lean, food and drink, health and sickness, prosperity and poverty, all things come to us not by chance, but by his fatherly hand. I remember at that time sharing with us that hymn Whatever my God ordains is right. Now again, that's a hard pill to swallow, isn't it? Whatever my God ordains is right, his holy will abideth. I will be still whatever he does and follow where he guideth. He is my God, though dark my road. He holds me that I shall not fall. And so to him I leave it all. And so to him I leave it all. In darkness, because of you. Now, as we go on in the Bible story, we get that sense that God has brought me into it, and wonderfully, God will bring me through it. And he's taking me somewhere far better. There are more pieces of the jigsaw, of course, aren't there? But he does all of this, bringing us into sometimes even Psalm 88 type territory for his glory and for my greatest possible good, though that is hard to hear. William Cowper, this guy here, is one of the greatest English poets. He was a close friend of John Newton, who wrote Amazing Grace. And he suffered terribly with severe depression. Newton was a great friend to him and walked with him through that for years and years and years. And Cowper wrote a hymn, which as soon as I say the first line, you'll know. God moves in a mysterious way, his wonders to perform. He plants his footsteps in the sea and rides upon the storm. Judge not the Lord by feeble sense, but trust him for his grace. Behind a frowning providence, he hides a smiling face. And there are times in our lives when we sense that frown and the darkness in our lives, and it is true that I'm in this darkness because of you. I'm in it. It's also true, and you'll bring me through it. And you'll bring me through it. Which leads to the last and perhaps most glorious thing. In darkness, my closest friend. That's the end of the psalm, isn't it? It's so grim, isn't it? Verse 13, but I cry to you for help, Lord. In the morning my prayer comes before you. Why, Lord, do you reject me and hide your face from me? And so on and so on. But then it ends, verse 18, you have taken from me friend and neighbor. Darkness is my closest friend. Now, it would be no use preaching a psalm and not being personal. The psalms are personal and they're emotional, aren't they? That's the nature of them. They engage with our emotions and our experiences and all of that. And what is my experience of Psalm 88 as a nearly 37-year-old bloke? What is my experience of this psalm? I have not lived Psalm 88. I've not lived Psalm 88. For me to say that would be untrue, and I think actually quite disrespectful and demeaning to those of you who have lived Psalm 88 at some point in your life. But that said, I do know something of what verse 3 means. I'm overwhelmed with troubles. Something of that, perhaps not as much as you have been overwhelmed by them, but I've felt overwhelmed with troubles at various times. Or verse 4, I've lacked strength. Feel that, definitely. Even young men grow weary and tired, and all of that. I think I perhaps have, even though this is not my day-to-day or weekly experience or the norm for me or most of my life by a long shot, but even had a touch of verse 8, not so much my closest friends taken away, but have been made repulsive. I've known that experience of people being repulsed by me, from me in some way, and how that feels at the other end of it, if you like, maybe a little. I certainly know that experience. Look, verse 1 and verse 9, 13, we've seen this, hasn't he? He prays, and he prays day and night, and he prays in the morning. Verse 13, I cry to you for help, Lord. In the morning my prayer comes before you. I've certainly known the experience of praying the same thing day after day after day for years. And hearing, I think, back his his no, or his not yet, not now, or possibly even his never, this side of eternity. And some of the discouragements and very mild sense of despair, perhaps. There was a season in my life before I was ever here where I was not in the deepest pit at all, not by the Psalm 88 standards. But I did experience at that time the darkness which seems like it won't shift. And many of you will have been there and worse, I'm sure. And so for some of us, the psalm is perhaps right where you're at today in so many ways, or maybe there's just shades of it here. But it's very real, isn't it? It's very honest. What can we learn from this psalm that seems so gloomy and bleak? I think there's three things. The first thing is this: look, the psalmist prays. This is so important, isn't it? The psalmist prays. Verse 1, you are the Lord God who saves me. Day and night I cry out to you. And again, as we've seen in verse 9 and verse 13, he cries out, literally verse 1, he screams to God. And he keeps on praying. You know, verse 13, in the morning my prayer comes before you. He persists in prayer to the Lord, daily prayer. And don't let's forget for one moment, it's a psalm, right? It's a song, it's a prayer. So this is his prayer. He's praying it out to God. And he's doing that every day. And does that resolve everything? No. But it's just good to do, to bring it all to him again and again and again. And that's something that we can do too, that we need to do too. The second thing is, wonderfully, we have a friend closer than darkness. Isn't that good? And let me say that's not a nice kind of trite or twee or kind of pious phrase to say in a situation. And I understand how that might be heard. But, you know, we do. We have a friend who is closer than darkness. The final verse, the psalmist says, darkness is my closest friend. Some of you know what that's like. Like right here is darkness. In your life, that's how it feels. It's the closest reality in your life. Your closest friend, if you like, is darkness. And yet, as Christians, gloriously, Jesus is closer. Jesus is closer than that closest darkness, because as we've seen in Ephesians, morning after morning, we are joined to him by a bond that cannot be broken. And his love never fails. And he says to us that he will never leave us or forsake us. Now that darkness might ebb and flow and it might flee away or it might not or whatever. Cooper knew that darkness in his life terribly. And Jesus is closer and indwells us by his Spirit and will never leave us or forsake us. We have a friend that's closer than darkness. Timothy Keller takes us to the cross, and he says, just poses the question to us, look, if Jesus Christ didn't abandon you in his darkness, the ultimate darkness, then why would he abandon you now in yours? That's helpful, isn't it? If he did not abandon you in his greatest moment of darkness, actually his greatest moment of darkness was for you, if he didn't abandon you there, then why would he abandon you, bound to him as you are, in your greatest moment of darkness? And that must be an encouragement to us. We have a friend closer than that darkness, however bleak and black that might feel or seem or is. And then the third and final thing just flows from that, doesn't it? We have hope. Because we have Jesus, because he is closer than all of that darkness, actually we have hope. Some of those questions that the psalmist posed, you think, what's he talking about? And verse 11, is your love declared in the grave? And he's basically saying, it's not. In Jesus, it is. God's love is declared in the grave because Jesus has conquered the grave. And so now we can experience God's love, not just now, but forever, on into eternity through Jesus, our closest friend. We have great hope as Christians. Verse 10, do you show your wonders to the dead? Do their spirits rise up and praise you? He's thinking, probably not. In Jesus, the dead will rise and praise him. You know, in the midst of deepest possible pain and despair and bleakest, blackest darkness, we can cry to him, as the psalmist does. We know that we're in his hands. Everything is in his hands. And everything that comes to us comes from his fatherly hand. And we have hope, at the very least, that one day we will rest in peace and rise in glory. And when darkness seems to hide his face, I rest on his unchanging grace. We're going to round off the series by I'm simply going to read a couple of verses from Psalm 84, and then we'll stand together and sing. Psalm 84. Better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of the wicked. For the Lord God is a sun and shield. The Lord bestows favor and honor. No good thing does he withhold from those whose way of life is blameless. Lord Almighty, blessed is the one who trusts in you. Keep trusting in him, folks, through light times and in dark times too.